Alright, so that's centered. Alright, so left lock. Right lock. Left lock. Okay, alright, so now the car is going to go live when I connect the negative, so just be on the lookout for anything. Ready?
Yeah.
Alright. Here we go. First fire up since a long time. Rising neutral. Cars in neutral. It might not start the first time just because it's been sitting a while and the computers have been off, so. Good? Oh yeah. Beautiful. Check the power steering fittings over here. Can you come take a look at these fittings when I go to turn the wheel? Watch your, the rotor's gonna move though, so just watch your hand. Look okay? I mean, you would see it, that's the high pressure line, so you'd see it come out pretty quick. Okay, I think the door was just manually locked, that's why. I'm gonna open that one. Hey, well I had to break into my own car just now. Get a little bit of smoke from that. Oh, you know what? That's probably all the fluid that I sprayed on that header. Yeah. So I can't believe I'm about to say this, but everything on the to-do list for the Harmonic Balancer and the subsequent subframe replacement on my C5 Corvette is crossed off, finished, done. And this wasn't even all of it. This is really the second half of the project of putting everything back on the car. There are 2 more boards that I'd already erased that had all the things that I had to take off the car and do to get access to replace the thing. So this was by far the farthest I've ever gone into a car, the most things I've ever taken off, and the most challenging job I've ever done on a car. I mean, I essentially took the piece off of the car, the main front lower half of the car that supports the engine, most of the front suspension, and then replaced the pulley, the main pulley that drives the belt to drive everything else on the engine. I took the exhaust off, etc., etc. There were a lot of things that had to have been done, that had to be done in order to get the car repaired and back in good working order. So it was a big job. It was a very challenging job, as I've already said, but it was very rewarding. I learned so much through the process, and I also saved myself a lot of money through the process as well. For those that have been watching the channel for a while now, you know that this process started in 2021. The car had been up on my Quickjacks since before Thanksgiving 2021. It all started when I was gonna take on the already challenging job to replace the Harmonic Balancer on this car because it was wobbling and doing the things that the Harmonic Balancers do on these cars. So that was already a challenging job, and during that process I found that my front subframe was cracked, either from being at the auction yard or from when the car was involved in the accident that was in. So I couldn't just leave the cracked front subframe on the car. That was definitely a no-go, big hazard, so that part had to be replaced. Finding the crack on the front subframe of this car really unraveled quite the onion of things that I had to figure out and do in order to get this car back into good mechanical working order so that it's safe to drive and there's no other damage on the car like that. So it was definitely a long process of just figuring out how I'm gonna do this based on the tools and the things that I have available in my garage here, and honestly saying, without my Quickjacks, this job would have been pretty much next to impossible, and I would have felt a lot less safe doing this on jack stands. So big plus up to the Quickjacks that I bought. Those things are worth their weight in gold, and they do weigh a lot, so they're worth a lot when it comes to doing maintenance in your garage here. Obviously I'm not going to install a 2-post lift in my residential home garage here, so those Quickjacks are a lifesaver. So if you don't have some, I'm not sponsored by them. I'm just giving an honest review and opinion from my experience of having my car sit up on those Quickjacks for literally 5 months while I figured out and did this very challenging job of replacing the Harmonic Balancer and the front subframe on the car. So as you guys already saw earlier in the video, I got this car started for the first time in probably 5 months since late November when I first started on this job, disconnected the battery, cut the life off to this car, and started on replacing the Harmonic Balancer pulley and the subframe. So it was a big deal to get this car started again, make sure everything was working properly, there were no error lights on the dash, also making sure that the Harmonic Balancer the new one wasn't wobbling, and man, I tell you, that thing is dead straight when the car is running. You can't even tell the car is running, that's how still it is. So I was really pleased to see that. But as some of you already saw, some things happened when I started the car. Essentially, I locked myself out of my own car while it was running, and that was my only set of keys. So I essentially had to break into my own car while the car was running in my garage here. I just want to take a little time at the end of the video here to kind of debrief everything, show you guys in a little more detail what's happened, what went on, and what the next steps are for this car, because I already have more things to do based on something that I discovered when I was running and driving the car after starting it for the first time. So I'm going to bring you guys over to the car and I'll kind of show you in more detail of the last little steps here that I had to do to get the car running and back on the ground. So first and foremost, the first thing that I had to do in this video was I had to refill the power steering fluid, bleed the power steering rack, which just essentially meant going lock to lock lock several times to get all of the air out of the power steering lines. So that was pretty easy, got that done pretty quickly. The next thing that I had to do, with the help of my dad, he helped come over and help me bleed the brakes on the front passenger side, since I had to disconnect that brake line. So we kind of added some new fluid and bled those brakes, got all the air out of the lines there as well. And then from there, it was really simple. Basically, it was just connect the battery, make sure nothing was smoking from an electrical short somewhere, but I was pretty sure that I had connected everything properly. The thing that I was concerned about the most, or not concerned, but just had my attention the most, was the starter. So I wanted to make sure that I connected all the starter wires properly, which I always take pictures and then double check and back reference to my pictures, so we were good there. So then from there, it was time to start the car. So I thought that because the car had been sitting for so long and the computers have essentially been off, you know, so when you have the battery disconnected, the computers in the car have no power, and the computers sometimes have to self-learn the air, fuel, and ignition timing and everything again. So I was expecting this car to have to crank over a few times before it started, but man, as you guys heard, this thing fired right up, and part of that was help to the new starter that I put in the car, but this thing fired up like a champ, and it was no problem. So the minute that I fired it up, as you guys probably saw in the video, I was going around and checking for leaks. Mainly the thing I was looking for leaks on was the power steering system, since I had all of that disconnected. Wanted to make sure that the high pressure and return lines for the power steering system were A-OK, and there were no leaks coming from that. I was also just checking for other leaks as well, you know, for some reason coolant, which I'll get into in a second, or oil or anything like that. But everything looked great. And in the excitement of getting the car started so easily after 4 or 5 long months of the car sitting dead, basically, I didn't realize that the doors, for some reason, they were locked here. And so I had the car running, obviously in neutral, up on the jack stands. So I kind of just went like this and lightly shut the door, not realizing that because the door was locked, at that point I would not be able to get into the car. So that was quite the problem, because the car was running, the keys were inside, both doors were locked for some reason. I, again, don't know why. And that was my only key. I don't have a spare key for this car, which this whole incident has prompted me to go to the dealer and get a new key made. So I essentially had to break into my car in my own garage here while the car was running. And I'm glad I had my phone sitting on the center console recording another angle of me starting the car up, because it captured perfectly of my attempt to break into my own car. So here's what I quickly jerry-rigged right here. So this is some threaded rod that I bent a little 90 in, and then this threaded rod wasn't long enough, so I used some packing tape and taped it to this aluminum flat bar. And because the door wasn't entirely closed, I could, and these are frameless windows here, I could essentially pull back the window enough to feed this thing in there and then yank the door latch flap, I guess, whatever you want to call it, and get the door open. So that was quite the little bit of excitement that I had there, on top of getting the car running for the first time. But needless to say, when I first started this car, it had plenty of time to run, get up to temperature, and cycle all the fluids. So that was all really exciting. Got the car running, let it run for a while, get up to temp. No aero lights on the dash, minus just the TPMS system telling me the tires were all low. So that was no problem at all. But so that wrapped up that evening. Well, the next morning I came out and found a little puddle of fluid underneath the car, right basically under the front belt here. And after putting my hand in it, smelling it, and then putting a paper towel on it and seeing the color of the fluid, I've found that that is coolant that was leaking. So as I already hinted at, I already have my next to do for this car before it's really mechanically sound, because it does leak coolant now. So the water pump is leaking coolant, and I'm guessing that's mostly because I replaced the belt and the tensioner on this. And so when you replace your new belt and also a tensioner, there's not as much stretch in the belt because it's a new belt and there's more tension on it with the new tensioner. So that puts a little extra strain and stress on the the bearing and seal of the water pump. And that's kind of a common thing that happens. So essentially, got to just order a water pump. It's like 130 bucks off Rock Auto, and just replace that. Needless to say, that shouldn't be too much of a headache. It's a pretty common thing on all LS and kind of LQ V8s here from Chevy that has to be replaced periodically. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the long process of replacing the harmonic balancer and the front subframe. Now granted, if I put a lot more dedication each weekend, I could have got this done a lot sooner, but between the holidays, some family things, traveling for work and stuff like that, it kind of drew out the process a little bit. But you know, that's a hobby for you. You do it when you have free time. So I'm just so glad this is done. Like I said, this was a very challenging, but at the same time rewarding experience to push myself and really learn a lot about this car. So the other point that I want to briefly mention, because it's not something to skimp over, is how much money I just saved myself by doing this in my own garage here, obviously with the help of some friends and family members as well. But I got some quotes from some local shops to do this job, and I was going to be looking at probably in the range of about $2,500 to even $3,500 to drop the subframe. The harmonic balancer would obviously be prorated, but all of the things, and that's not even all the preventative stuff that I did as well, and not talking about parts and stuff like that, but I probably saved myself a few $1,000s at the minimum. So at the minimum, this one job paid for my Quickjacks. So that's definitely something to consider if you're a garage mechanic, hobbyist, tinkerer like I am. You can save yourself obviously a lot of money by doing things yourself if you have the right tools. Labor is obviously one of the most expensive parts of doing any type of car job, especially if it takes a long time. Those hours rack up quickly, and that's how your mechanic costs go up pretty quickly from there. So that is a great way to justify getting yourself some new equipment for your garage and your home shop. And then part of it obviously falls on too is how much do you value, or how do you value your time? If you think, oh, I'd rather do other things, I'd rather just pay somebody just to get it done with real quick so I can enjoy the car, that's totally fine. You're justified to do that. But for me, I bought this car to wrench on it, so I'd kind of feel guilty if I just took it to a shop, paid them to do it, when I really bought this car to wrench on it and challenge myself. And the other clip you guys probably saw before I jumped in here was a clip of me applying these two stickers to my garage cabinets here. And you might think, well, that's kind of silly. Why would you include that in the video? Well, putting these on the cabinets here like that was my stamp of finishing this build. It was something, I got these two stickers from when I bought the ATI harmonic balancer pulley, and I was just for some reason looking forward and waiting to put these stickers up here until the car was completely done, all down on the ground, back on its own four wheels, running again. So that was kind of a cool moment for me. I was looking forward to doing that. It's a small, silly little thing, but it was kind of a cool moment in the build process and this phase of my project car. So that was quite the job, as I've already stated many times, but I'm so glad that I did it. It was very challenging, but at the same time very rewarding to push myself, and now I'm just that much more confident about the things that I can do to fix this car. There were many times where I wanted to just not do it and just pay someone, but nope, I pushed myself with the help of my wife and my friends and family, and they really pushed me to like, no man, you bought this car to work on it, you know, work on it. So I'm so glad I did it. It definitely wasn't, it's not for the faint-hearted to dive that deep into a car. There were many points in the process where I was uncomfortable physically, just from being under the car in awkward positions, but just also from a thoughts perspective, being uncomfortable, because it's a very monumental task to replace the whole front subframe for some people that haven't gone that far into a car. Anyways, I'm rambling now, but the moral of the story and what I'm trying to say is if you have a project car like this, or you're thinking about buying a project car that needs some work, and you have the ambition to do it, it's very rewarding. And if you have the space and the tools that you can do to provide yourself to make the job that much easier, it's just such a cool thing. It's very challenging, but it's fun. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Definitely hope this impacts you guys in some way and inspires you to either buy a project car or get out in the garage and work on your project car. So thank you guys so much for joining me in this journey of fixing up my Corvette, especially if you stuck all the way to the end of the video. I'm hoping after doing the water pump here and maybe a few other things, we can get to doing some of the fun mods. I've got that Billy Boat exhaust system in the corner there that I'm going to be putting on. Got my short throw shifter, and then I'm looking at some other parts and modifications on the car as well. Obviously, you got to do a bunch of body work on the front end too. So if you guys haven't already, definitely subscribe for all that content to come. And for those that don't know, I also do a lot with 3D printing. So my plan is to mesh my two passions together, which is cars and 3D printing, to 3D print some really cool parts for this car. So thank you all so much again. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. And other than that, I will see you in the next one.